Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Nisum Tech Talk. Our topic today is AI and aerospace, a quantum leap in business strategy. During today's session, please interact with your dashboard and let us know what you think of the presentation in the reactions icon at the bottom of your screen in the dock. Your mics will be muted during the presentation, so please submit any questions in the Ask a Question widget on your dashboard, and we'll get to them at the Q&A part of today's presentation. I am Veronica Quinton. I'm your host for today, and I'm joined by two experts. Our first speaker is Montana Bilger, co-founder and CTO at Deep Space Biology. He focuses on applying space and AI technologies to life sciences and beyond. And our second speaker is Guillermo Delgado, AI Strategy Director at Nisum and co-founder and COO at Deep Space Biology. He specializes in leveraging AI for business transformation. We're excited to have you join us today as we discuss how advances in space and AI are transforming the way businesses operate. So, passing it to you, Montana.
Awesome. Sorry for the lack of space bow tie in that picture. That was the glory days, I guess. Forgot my space bow tie today, but that's okay. As she mentioned, I'm Montana Bilger, the CTO and co-founder of Deep Space Biology. We're all about using AI and space data to accelerate health discoveries and also integrate AI solutions into all kinds of stuff to make things smarter and faster. This picture hopefully is what you think of when you think of space, because most people, when they think of space, they imagine astronauts like floating around in zero gravity or rockets blasting off to Mars. And sometimes that creates a disconnect. It makes people feel like space is something that's just reserved for rocket scientists or sci-fi nerds like myself, because most of us aren't astronauts. Most of us aren't going to space. So we assume that space doesn't actually touch our lives or businesses in any significant way. But the reality is that's not true. Space is way more relevant than you might think. And I want to give you a quick teaser to the rest of the presentation. But if you have your smartphone, you can look at it real quick. There's two things that are space technology directly. The smartphone camera on the back. That technology was first developed at NASA and was integrated into smartphones later. And then also GPS, like if you use Google Maps or Apple Maps if you like getting lost. I'm just kidding. That's just the beginning of the tech that comes from space that's translated back to Earth. And today I want to showcase how space is quietly and also not so quietly shaping the world around us and why you should care more about it yourself as well as for your business. Let me get the next slide here. There we go. So there are lots of examples of how space technology impacts our everyday life. A couple examples here on the screen. The first is imaging technology from the Apollo missions that was helped to see the moon, actually led to the CT scan, which is if you know anything about healthcare, it's a huge cornerstone of modern medicine, and it's helped save countless lives every day. That really stylish, wireless headset that the Apollo astronauts used in that picture, that actually inspired, and that technology was leveraged to build what we now have today, like AirPods or any other sort of wireless headset technology. And lastly, the Gemini program, which is a little before the Apollo program, pioneered the whole concept of remote health monitoring. And that laid the foundation for wearable tech. If you have like an Apple Watch or a Garmin, counting your steps, your heartbeats, some of them have like blood pressure, stuff like that. That technology is all derived from space ingenuity. And that's not all. There's actually a lot more amazing products and things that have come from space. Your home probably has some space tech in it. If you have, well, maybe you don't have a dustbuster, but if you have like a cordless vacuum, that motor design actually came from the Apollo lunar surface drill. They had to make a motor that was lightweight, that was not plugged into anything. So they used that technology to develop cordless vacuums. And then also the memory foam that might be in your mattress or in the cushiony part of your the midsoles of your running shoes, that actually traces back to the astronaut overshoot for them to walk on the moon and stuff. So really, really cool technology, but it's actually not just about cool gizmos and gadgets either. Space research has given us lots of practical solutions too, that save lives in other ways. So to purify all the water and sometimes the urine of astronauts, they developed technology in a remote location space, right, to filter water better. And that design and that technology developed actually helped bring clean water technology to disaster zones where they might not have as many resources and have resource constraints. All these ingenuities and inventions from space, they're not just random though. They show how space pushes us to solve really tough problems, and how those solutions end up actually improving life here on Earth. And you might ask the question, so why does space, spark so much innovation? Well, if you think about space, it's kind of like the ultimate pressure cooker. You've got a lot of challenges you have to deal with. You've got radiation, microgravity or zero gravity, and limited resources. So every bit of food, water, air, energy, and cargo space, those are all things that have to be optimized for space. And when you have resource constraints, it actually forces ingenuity and advancements in technology to solve those tough problems. Here's why it matters to you though. The hottest fires of space forge the strongest steels, and the extreme conditions of space, they breed solutions that don't just stay in space. They actually translate back into massive business opportunities on Earth as well. It's not just about, again, the tech gadgets or the materials. We also have things like satellites, which I'm gonna let Guillermo talk about that later. He's gonna talk about how satellites are transforming so many industries in satellite data, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Ultimately, space discoveries and technology, they actually help give multiple industries like healthcare, manufacturing, logistics, biotech, pharma, a massive competitive edge. And even if you're not launching rockets, you're not the guy, in NASA launching rockets, the ripple effects of space innovation truly can transform how you work and live and how your business operates. Let me to the next slide here. There's an interesting phenomenon happening right now in space, and many that don't follow space closely aren't super aware of it. But let's talk about something that's a really game-changing that's happening right now: the cost of getting to space. So a decade ago, sending a kilogram of payload up to space cost like tens of thousands of dollars, and that was pretty standard. When SpaceX introduced reusable rocket technology, the price tag just exponentially dropped for going to space, and it continues to drop. It's a fraction of what it once was. When Starship, if you've ever seen the videos recently last year of Starship, the big shiny metal one where they have the little chopstick arms to catch it, on the way back, when that is online and operational, it's going to drop it even further. And it's not just about saving money to go to space. It's about more access to space. What used to be only something that NASA could do will now be available to more universities, to startups, to even high schoolers that can afford to send experiments into orbit because of this reduced cost. And when we have more access to space, we actually get more business opportunities, right? So we get more payloads, more innovation, and this isn't just space travel, but fields like in biotechnology, pharmaceutical industry, material science, all of those opportunities from more access to space is opening this new frontier where anyone that has a good idea can actually play the game. And the benefits, again, aren't locked away in some remote elite lab at NASA, but they're actually impacting businesses every day already. I want to talk about three kind of main buckets that space historically falls into, and how those different things can bring value, not just to you, but to industries. There's three really buckets. You've got Earth to space, space to Earth, and then Earth to space to Earth. I want to kind of break those down individually. So when you think of Earth to space, you've got rocket science, right? We're building the thing to get us up there, and all the infrastructure that surrounds getting things to space. Think about satellites there as well. The continual reusable rocket growth is going to, again, explode that. And if you aren't aware right now, there's actually a very, I say, tight commercial space race amongst a whole host of various companies that are building the next or the first commercial space station. So we have the ISS right now. They're building a new commercial stations because that cost is going down. So lots of opportunity there. We also have space to Earth. So think of this as like when you're sending things to space in order to learn how things work in space conditions. The picture there on the slide has a flame and how it looks, how it burns differently in microgravity, and why that might not have direct impact for you. That the idea of learning from space is massively important. There's obviously a direct application for us expanding our horizons in space, going farther, going to the moon, going to Mars. But even more so, the real benefit, and where most people are, I guess, interested in, is how do we take the findings from space and bring those back to Earth? Because there's so many amazing opportunities and insights there. One of them actually is bone density. So bone density studies. So if you are an astronaut in space for really any sort of extended period of time, your bone density gets worse. And this is actually, studying that phenomenon has allowed us to understand and treat osteoporosis better. So that's just like one example of many where space has a benefit back to Earth by analyzing the data. In fact, there's actually been, if you weren't aware of this, there's actually been thousands of experiments sent to space, formerly with the Space Shuttle program, but still on the International Space Station. And this includes things like material science experiments and a lot of biological experiments. And then lastly, we got this third bucket, Earth to space to Earth, right? And this has been a really big focus the last 2 decades on the ISS, with a lot of the research happening, but also with the increased commercialization of the space industry. And this is where companies are not just sending things to space to study, but they're sending things to space and then bring those things back down to Earth to use the products that are developed. The picture there is a protein crystallization. So what's really unique about low gravity, microgravity conditions is that how things construct themselves molecularly is different. So if you've ever seen like an astronaut drink water, it's like a sphere. It doesn't like get in a droplet because gravity's not acting on it in the same way. Same thing with protein crystallization. These are technologies and methods that pharma and biotech are using to actually make better quality products. So not just study it and then get the data back. That's important, but also get the actual product back to Earth. So I want to kind of double click into that last bucket, because that's probably the one people are least familiar with, and how this Earth to space to Earth application has a ton of potential. So in my current role at Deep Space Bio, our team has spent a lot of time studying the impacts of space on biological systems. It's kind of in the name, right? Deep space biology. And what we're really passionate about is chronic disease understanding and treatment. If you've read anything about the just development of chronic diseases in our society, it's increasing across the world. Increases in cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, the list continues to go on and on. One of the, I guess, interesting, good and bad things about space is that astronauts and animals like rodents that go up to space, they experience the acceleration of a bunch of these chronic diseases and conditions that are actually related to aging, right? So there's lots of reasons for that on like the biological side of the house, but for the conditions, think of things like muscle atrophy, so like muscle wasting, osteoporosis, that bone density loss, macular degeneration, so like vision issues, eyesight degradation, increased cancer risk, gut dysbiosis, and like metabolic dysfunction, which is associated with obesity. So this disease acceleration, it stinks for those that are going to space, but it actually allows us to understand these chronic conditions in like a new light, because time is often a confounding variable with these chronic conditions, because the longer something takes to develop, it's harder to pinpoint like what actually makes that thing tick. So for us at Deep Space Bio, and also just in the industry of space biology, it allows us to look at these conditions and diseases in an accelerated timeline in a new fashion so that we can actually understand what makes them tick and lead to new insights for those diseases and conditions. For example, we're actually doing some research right now alongside the Mayo Clinic, and we saw that in space-flown mice. Actually, I need to click my next. There we go. In space-flown mice, after just 2 weeks in space, these space-flown mice developed early stages of what's called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is very common in obesity. And what's interesting about this, though, is those mice didn't get any dietary changes. Just by existing in space for 2 weeks, they started getting fat buildup on their liver. Normally in a lab, you have to feed them like, McDonald's diet for months on end to get these like fat little mice. But in space, it happened just by being there. So really fascinating stuff. This condition, though, affects about 1 in 4 people, especially those with obesity. And we discovered using that space data some really interesting findings that are new to the field. We were able to do that, though, with the introduction of AI technologies to analyze that space data, bring in more data as well that's relevant, and then get kind of the needle in the haystack of why those diseases, that disease progresses and how it develops. Normally, the drug discovery and disease research process takes a very long time. This picture is kind of a snapshot on the screen. Actually, do I have another? Nope, wrong one. Oh, sorry. There we go. Normally, this process can take like over a decade and can cost like billions of dollars. And there's lots of opportunity for space specifically to improve the drug discovery process with the incorporation of AI in space. There's kind of 3 main ways that I see this helping expedite that early stage drug discovery. First, we have the possibility of finding better drug targets. So with these chronic conditions, right, they're tough to study sometimes, as I mentioned earlier. But in space, we get that shortened timeline. And when you can find a new disease insight, it allows us to approach that disease in a new way and potentially treat it differently. So better quality drug targets. There's also a really interesting thing on the AI side of the house where there's all these amazing developments in AI, specifically around designing drugs. So you can simulate, you can take that drug target from space and you can simulate using AI all the potential ways to treat it, right? And that wasn't possible 5-10 years ago in the same way it is now. So it really can speed up that time. And then lastly, you have the actual manufacturing of drugs in space to produce a better quality drug. So you not only have the early stage drug discovery, you have the research, the design of the drug, and then also the manufacturing of the drug, all possible with space and AI technologies. But this is just one industry. Like I obviously work in the space biology and technology AI world, but that's one of many industries that space and AI can tackle and help improve. You've got healthcare, logistics, agriculture, security, climate science, manufacturing, and the list goes on. Space isn't just some like distant future kind of pipe dream. It's actually a catalyst for innovation now, and it's a competitive edge. And we pair that data from space and the insights from space with AI, the possibilities are just endless. And this is where I'm going to pass the virtual mic to Guillermo, who's going to talk more about how AI and space come together to make real world impacts today and can help impact your life tomorrow. So with that, I'll pass the mic.
Thank you, Montana. Actually, it has been really an amazing journey for men. When we started in the 60s to explore space. In the last decades, actually, man has gone just once through the Apollo mission to deep space. The rest of the missions has been conducted in low orbit, where we discover near the Earth a perfect place for becoming the next R&D facility and the next operation and production facility as well. So in this part of the presentation, I will try to guide you through some applications that we use that at Nisum and also at Deep Space Biology to address some challenges that any company in the world is facing. So let's start with the case one, data and code modernization. As Montana mentioned, and the left one is a picture taken out of the International Space Station. International Space Station has been up and running for probably 20 years and is going to be replaced by a new station by the end of this decade. But there has been conducted more than 500 experiments. One of the challenges was that every experiment produced a significant amount of data, not necessarily following a standard, and that data was input by not necessarily data scientists or computer scientists. So it was not structured in the way that was capable to be injected into AI or ML pipelines. So our team was selected to standardize that information and to put that in a way that is structured and including all the metadata that it comes with that information. For example, in the biology field, you had information from genomic, transcriptomic, metabolomic, and proteomic. That is called the multiomic kingdom. But as well, there are experiments on radiation, experiments on testing materials, where actually what you do is compare what happened in this low orbiting space compared with Earth. With that comparison, you're capable to formulate hypotheses and inject into algorithms and to discover things. I mean, to understand why disease or materials fail in some way. So that's a very interesting information, but it was not ready. It was somehow disparate ways to store that information. So we use proprietary algorithms, some generative AI, and reinforcement learning to refine the whole structure. And at the end, we end having, the first AI ready information extracted in a way now that information is serving 2,500 principal investigators and scientists around the world. That is somehow the community that NASA has for making these very interesting discoveries and acceleration in different domains. We use that experience, and in Chile, with a large bank, they asked us for something similar. In this case, not related to the data, but in this case, related to the code and the language. Was an old Asian language, a very important platform was developed. But as you know, language are suffering of obsolescence, and versions are deprecated. Support for those versions are as well, somehow closed by the major technology companies because they are pushing you to move to the next version. So the challenge was how we could modernize our code using exactly the same technology that we use for harmonization of the ISS information. So we applied as well AI, and the results were really, really very interesting. And we expedite almost the process by 80%. That is huge. Otherwise, that would be a pretty labor-intensive case. And here is one example how technology and capabilities that you acquire in space were used now for the benefit of companies or in general of the people on Earth. This is something that we are applying in other clients around the world, but it's something that could showcase how technology that is called translational technology, from space to Earth, in a way that we are taking a great advantage and leverage on that. The following case is something very interesting. There are very interesting sources of information and other satellites and sensors that are collecting data in a multimodal way, from images, text, numbers, audio. You may imagine all the ways that this information is collected. Spectrum as well, the infrared, ultraviolet, and all the the wavelengths along the spectrum of waves around Earth. So every day, every minute, that information is stored, and there is a nice repertoire of NASA APIs. You are capable. Some of this information, and most of this information from NASA, is open sourced. So you may apply that information for your terrestrial applications. In this case, we applied part of this information for a challenge that from a company in order to predict this bearing train that was for a major company that produces this kind of vehicles for mining. We were able to predict when each spare on components on this bearing train was going to be exhausted or should be replaced or maintained. So the kind of information that we inject into the models, besides some information coming from the vehicle has a satellite connection, producing a lot of indicators of how, talking about the health of that equipment, information coming from a space light, the nature of the soil, how abrasive is the soil where this vehicle is going to work. The other was humidity, temperature, and other information that we injected into the model. The result was that we were able to obtain a prediction of more than 90% in accuracy. And this was something that helped a lot this company in order to send the customer a plan for maintenance that could, save money to the customer, but as well produce revenues for the company selling the spares and also the maintenance services. This is another example how predictive maintenance was applied using NASA information as well, other data. The third one, you may have seen probably these rovers on Mars, where there are autonomous vehicles that are equipped with many high-end technology instruments, and is almost a lab that is sitting in 6 wheels on the surface of Mars. The challenge here is that in order to produce an extraction from Earth, due to the distance, the way that scientists develop or design this vehicle is taking as much decision as possible with models, programs that are sitting on the same vehicle. So with that technology developed at the JPL laboratory with the Caltech partnership, we developed a dosification for a mining company in Peru in order to automate their and improve the copper extraction optimization, increasing significantly the income and reducing the amount of reactives and chemical products that is normally used for this metallurgic plant. This produced a lot of return on the investment that the company applied here. What we did was we automated the whole line of dosification of these reactives. Every 15 minutes, the model took the decision how much of each component along the line should be applied to the whole line of minerals. It was a pretty successful case. And again, it was inspired and taken from technology that was developed for the Mars rovers in space. Last but not least is something that is really useful, for example, in the agriculture industry. Satellites are taking pictures not only in the visible range of the spectrum, but as well in the ultraviolet and infrared regions. And also that information is stored with metadata that you are capable to use and inject into models that may predict or monitor plant diseases or the crop yield. But this is something that is pretty useful for agriculture companies. Optimize that. For instance, chlorophyll, that is a molecule where magnesium is based, reacts or is capable to be observed using a particular wavelength that may identify the amount of magnesium and chlorophyll in each of these plants. With that information, you are capable to improve the way that you dosify those chemical compounds into this, let's say, farm or production at a larger scale. And this has produced really, really very interesting results. This is another example how multispectral satellite imagery may apply not only in agriculture, but in another, for instance, monitoring ecosystem, improving renewable energies and other stuff that really may help companies across the world. No? Let me tell a little bit something about the top trends for 2025 and probably beyond. Innovations that are happening now. Let's discuss, for instance, advanced space manufacturing. Advanced space manufacturing is taking into account that they have to be really efficient in the type of materials. For instance, for solar panels. Solar panels, pretty recently, NASA has introduced a new technology that makes these solar panels really more efficient by 50%. You may imagine that in the future, you are going to be able to have, even at home, your solar panels that in order to reduce your electricity bill by the end of the month, but as well, even improving the way that energy is obtained with a more renewable source of energy. Let me give you an example. Today, I am talking to you through a Starlink internet connectivity. Before, that supposedly my internet provider, I had to call and set up an appointment with a technical guy, cable from different places at home. That whole process included a lot of, between quotes, contamination, and it was expensive because it was pretty labor intensive. What happened is I decided to migrate to Starlink. And all of a sudden, I just bought by myself my case containing a satellite disk, or in this case, it's a rectangular device to capture the signal from the satellite. And for myself, I was able to configure, and in 20 minutes, I was able to have internet connectivity. That has disrupted completely the way that we as humans are going to communicate, totally wireless, not depending upon the terrestrial infrastructure that may pollute the whole, environment, and as well is labor consuming and expensive. That may be in advanced communication, something that you may refer as a new trend and innovation for the following 5 years. Space mining is another thing that now Osiris mission from NASA has sent to actually mine one asteroid, looking for titanium. Basically, one small asteroid could provide $1 trillion in titanium. Why? Because in the future, if you want to go far from the Mars, you should have a factory for creating and producing rockets in the surface of Mars, and the perfect place to mine could be the asteroids that are surrounding between Mars and Jupiter in the solar system. So all these things are happening now. And we should, as a new frontier for researching and as well for producing things that we never thought before. Now, not only we are thinking out of the box, we are thinking out of the earth. In the next slides, you will see how in the last World Economic Forum, it was discussed that more than $1 trillion is going to be the size of the market and the space industry in 4 main axes: space economy, space sustainability, space access, and space research. You will recognize probably in each of these boxes your company producing some type of goods or services. For instance, even for robotics, habitation, that is going to be a dramatically changed. But for instance, the lunar base that has been developed, now Saudi is taking into account for improving the habitation in pretty desertic areas of the country. So this is the space economy. This is how space is now producing a whole revolution in all these markets. And so, as Montana mentioned, what the SpaceX produced dramatically changed the industry of space, because now send cargo to space is cheap. And today we are launching 3 rockets every day. So every week, sorry. But that is transporting more than probably 100 tons per rocket. With spaceship, the last generation of rockets, you will see 150 tons sent into space. So that is exactly what is not happening. And in this representation, you will see how let me try to do that for you. So here the question is it happening? For sure. We have seen in this animation, the launch pad 39 and 39A and B that's sitting in Cape Canaveral. And I attended one of these amazing launchings. And when you are there, you realize that something is happening, and it's happening today. So our invitation is for you to embrace this nice revolution, or just stuck into the old ways to do technology. So here the final thought is, you have your option to take into the rocket or be on the ground observing how your competition is moving forward. Thank you very much for this presentation, and we are totally open for a Q&A session. I would love to answer your question.
Thank you, Montana and Guillermo, for that. So yeah, let's hop into this. First of all, I see a shout out here from Jana. Thank you for joining us here today. First question in here. So how can businesses leverage space-derived data and AI models to enhance decision-making and drive innovation?
Guillermo, you want to answer that? You want me to answer that?
Montana, go ahead, please.
Yeah, sure, yeah. So I think a lot of it comes down to what is your service or product you're offering? Because obviously it's business dependent. I think probably the most agnostic type of data is satellite data. There's so much satellite data out there. And as Guillermo mentioned, not just visual data, but multispectral images. So things in the infrared and UV spectrums as well. That allows you to do a lot, not just with agriculture, but you think about security, logistics, all of those things require image data. And right now, the field of AI that's really moved a ton in the last 5 years is computer vision. It's been around for a while in its infancy, but like how good it is, it's really impressive. So using some more modernized AI models around computer vision with that satellite data, as well as on-ground sensors. When you get, as Guillermo mentioned, multimodal, multiple inputs of data, not just visual, but also additional sensors or maybe on-site cameras as well. That allows you to have lots of different features into the AI models to give you really good results. So from I think most businesses can probably see where satellite data can help them, as well as like data transformation. I think that's a problem that many companies face. Messy data that's disparate all over the place, and using AI tools and some of the methodologies developed from, again, analyzing space data, you can actually standardize that, make it nice and clean and ready for AI models. So I'll leave it with that, and Guillermo, you can fill in the blanks.
Well, I think it's a really good answer. Data is really the nice big asset that a company may have. And data acquired by, for instance, in this case, from all the experiments and observations conducted by NASA, NASA is paying trillions of dollars to obtain that information. So that amount of value you may have, and you have access to get that information for you. But the question is how I transform that information into something actionable for my company. That is where we can help you in order to do that. So yeah, I'm hope that you will contact us in the future. So that will be great.
Yeah, huge space nerds, huge AI nerds. So happy to help in any way.
All right. Next question. What role does reinforcement learning and Gen AI play in optimizing space mission logistics and automation?
Ooh, it's a good question. I can take a whack at it first, and then Guillermo, you can fill in the gaps, because you have a lot to add here as well. I think one of the things that's really interesting about just generative AI and reinforcement learning is, Guillermo mentioned it a little bit, but when you have these rovers or you have rockets We have systems that have to operate autonomously, right? They have to be really smart. And they can't be connected to the cloud, right? It's not like they have instant access to talking to Earth. So they have to be able to operate on their own. And that requires a lot of knowledge and information that a lot of the generative AI and LLM models are really good at is getting a big corpus of information and having an agent that's really smart at one specific task or multiple tasks. So I think regards to space, how it comes back to Earth, when you design things for those space systems, you have to take into account, right, limited power consumption, electricity, as well as autonomy. So I think both of those ingredients allow those solutions to work way better on Earth when you do have some of those. You don't have as many resource constraints. So if you design it with a resource limitation and it's really good, imagine bringing that back down to Earth with resources or more resources. So it allows you to really do a lot in that regard. But I'll let Guillermo hop in as well.
Sure. Vero, I'm able to share my screen. Probably this is going to be really better for them. Let me share. Okay. So let me share with you reinforcement learning and automation. Here you will see Boston Dynamics along all these years. That guy is not treating bad, but this is a perfect example of reinforcement learning. Basically what you do is you set some sort of test for the robots. It's a try and fail. In order to learn to do these kind of things, the robot is programmed with a platform that is called basically mostly in reinforcement learning, where success is defined when that unit accomplished the challenge or overcome the challenge that was designed to. You see how along the years robots are better, but this is because the whole AI reinforcement learning models are being trained and also exposed to different situations that not necessarily they were programmed to, but they are now capable to react. So in the question, when you are talking, with the role they're going to play, I think automation is probably going to take more the field of reinforcement learning. You can do this for many topics in your company. For instance, optimizing processes. For instance, quality assurance, and other domains that you may incorporate those technologies into your corporation.
Thank you for sharing that video. That was a cool image to go with that answer. Well, next question in here. So what can other industries such as manufacturing learn from the early adoption of AI in space, which predates the current AI utilization?
Great question. Really good question. I think that actually synchronizes nicely with what Guillermo said just a moment ago with reinforcement learning and with manufacturing in space. The thing with space is to do a test in space on a material, it costs some money, right? So the cost of failure, not just the dollars, but the risk, business risk, can be higher for those early adopters. How they're improving that manufacturing process is using computer vision and other AI tools to improve the process happening in space. So when you have those, you have some sort of camera or multiple inputs and sensors that are monitoring the manufacturing process in space, it can make slight adaptations on the fly if it needs to, based on the conditions that it's in. And I think that sort of thinking is really useful for manufacturing on Earth as well, because if you have whatever widget you're making or whatever thing you're manufacturing, if you don't have good quality assurance, you can make a lot of messed up products that all go in the trash pile. So using AI to monitor the quality of things down a manufacturing line or just in any manufacturing process to make adjustments as necessary, or to just identify if there is an issue with the machine or whatever. I think that's a really interesting application that is starting to be used more with space companies now that are manufacturing in space, and that is being adopted by lots of different industries that manufacture and assemble anything. So, Guillermo, do you have any other pieces on that?
No, that you did it well.
Thank
Vero,
you.
next question.
All right. So what are the biggest technological hurdles in integrating AI and space technologies into enterprise solutions, and how can they be addressed?
So let me share again my screen to show you which is the main hurdle. That guy that exists in every company, that guy who is going to block that initiative because he's not going to take, or adopt the challenge, or maybe he doesn't understand what these represent for the future of the company. So my point is that the challenge is going to come from having a mindset to embrace technology and to adopt the competitive frontier in a way that is going to be beneficial for the corporation. So for me, that is what a cultural barrier, and the mindset, the appropriate mindset in the C-level, or even at any level of the company, the main hurdle that you will have to face.
Yeah, and as a cultural hurdle, that's huge. No one likes to be replaced by things, so that's always a challenge. And using tools that can optimize processes can create fear of some people, but it also makes better business overall, and people hone in skills in that using those tools. One of the things about the technological hurdle, I think, within like the data science AI field, it's a very popular. It's a little cheesy, but a common phrase is with data models is garbage in, garbage out. So at the core, think of data as like the fuel for the car. If you have bad data, or it's structured poorly, or it's not usable, you can't really do anything with it, or it's not representative of what's actually going on. So the first step with any organization is really to understand what kind of data do you have, how is it stored, how is it structured, and then getting it into a format that you can actually apply AI tools and get it AI ready for these larger like company-wide systems to work effectively. So you're not getting, random responses that don't make any sense, so that it actually is trained on the right data. So yeah, that's I think a technological hurdle is the models, the implementation. Once you have the data in a nice format, it makes it a lot easier. I think we got two more new questions there, Vero.
Yep. So next one here. So how can AI be helpful for emergencies in future human space missions?
Oh, I got this one, Guillermo. I got this one. This is great. So actually, you probably can talk about this more because you're on that NASA committee. But anyways, so if you think about if you've ever used like ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini, these agents are trained on certain types of data. Well, all data, but they're not specialized. When you have this new developing thing called agentic AI, where you're making very specialized agents based on certain subsets of data, so it's really, really good. I think this is a amazing opportunity for AI to be used on long space missions. Imagine having like a pocket doctor. I know it's not the same. It's like can't do the procedure, but maybe with robotics, who knows? But like being able to query a very smart agent, you tell all your symptoms, all your data, you put it into this agent, and it can give you what's going on and how to fix that emergency. I think that's where all this autonomy is really useful, is because you can't wait 10 minutes for the transmission to come back from Earth. Like you don't have that much time. So emergencies in space, you need somebody to act now, and kind of like a pocket doctor AI type thing would be really, really useful. And that same technology can be used anywhere. If you're hiking in a remote spot, you don't have access to the internet, or you're in a remote location in the ocean, things like that. That's where those kind of technologies are translatable across multiple industries. Guillermo, do you have anything else on that?
Yeah, with a team at NASA, we wrote a couple of papers talking about exactly this, autonomous laboratories and medical stations in space. The challenge is really great because you are not going to be able to conduct a surgery, in the middle of space when you're in Mars. For a mission in Mars, it takes about 2 years. Not because it takes just 4 or 5 months to get to Mars, but in order to get your trip back, Mars has to be located in a place that again is close to the Earth. So what happens if you have an emergency there? So we wrote a very interesting paper, a couple of papers talking about this, where all these technologies, AI, play a fundamental role for this autonomous operation. I will try to place here on the link, or we are going to send everybody in the attendees the free copy of the papers that are really something that you may observe how this may be translated into something actionable for your company.
Awesome. The next question in here. Does lag present a problem with distances between AI requester and datasets used for RAG? Distances in space are vast. What can be done to remedy this for applications on Mars and beyond where the corpus of information used by the AI is on Earth?
Fantastic question. So yeah, good mention of RAG. So what I think what's happening right now, especially like in the open source AI development world, is people are developing like miniaturized models that take far less compute power, but are trained on they have smart tokenization. So they have like smaller amount of data they're using, but they're still pretty good. If you would take essentially a very specialized amount of data around medical information and train a model that was like localized, and I think that's the only way you can do it. You wouldn't have time to wait, right? That lag, it just would be too long from Mars to Earth. You would have an issue. So I think there's a lot of development happening in making smaller models that are really efficient, which is great for space. And then also you'd have to have that data and compute power on board, which is possible. You have to really optimize again that trade-off, right, of information storage and computer power usage with speed sometimes. So that is a very good technical question, and I think there's a lot of people working on that problem right now. But it does present a problem. To answer the question, yes. So you gotta have those ingenious solutions for those kind of tough problems. So yeah.
All right, so looks like those are all the questions we have right now. If you do want to dive into this topic further, you can book a meeting with us at the end of today's session. You can also connect with us on LinkedIn in the speaker's bio. Please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to answer any other questions you may have. So that is it for today. Thank you again, everybody, for joining. Well, have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.